Hiya, happy Sunday, it's me again, Anya, back with another episode of Makeup and Metaphors, where we read books and we serve the ultimate makeup looks. Today I am serving you white liquid eyeliner with razor stripe in my brow, being that cool kid in school. Obviously I didn't actually have to shave that there, I just used some magic tricks of makeup. Thank you for joining me again on another week. We've got an exciting giveaway happening over the next 14 days. Well, probably 12 days when I actually post this, because it's Friday night right now. Quite late as well. It's like 12 o'clock. Oops. But you'll be Sunday when you're watching this. So you have just under 2 weeks to enter my 500 subscriber giveaway. It is only open to residents of Ireland and the UK. They're not the same place. Don't try it. And this is what is up for grabs. Got a little bit of Morphe Jeffree Star, we've got a little bit of Jeffree Star Shane Dawson, we've got some e.l.f., we've got some BH Cosmetics brushes, we've got some foaming lashes, some nails, some highlighter palettes, some glittery notepads, everything that you would need to basically be a mini me. Oh, that sounds fantastic, doesn't it? Okay, so let's get into the video. Let's talk about the famous author Mary Shelley, and to be quite honest, her tragic life. I really feel for this woman after doing a little bit of research about her. If you want to see some of the links that I used to research this, they are down below. Also, how to enter the competition will be in the bio. So happy Sunday and enjoy the video. Today we're going to be talking about Mary Shelley, super famous author, famous for her gothic novel Frankenstein, also known as the modern Prometheus, and of course being married to her husband Percy Bysshe Shelley, not Percy Bysshe Shelley, which is what I called him last week, and definitely have been calling him for about 12 years now. So thank you, internet, for correcting me on that. Right, let's get started to read books and serve looks. Mary was born into quite famous a family. Both of her parents were famous and like very successful in their own right. Her mum was Mary Wollstonecraft, who was a super famous like feminist author, philosopher. If you've ever studied like women's studies or anything like that in university or in school, you've more than likely heard of her mum. And then her father was William Goodwin. And William was also a philosopher and a journalist and a writer at that time too. Unfortunately for Mary, her mum died like just around a month after she was born, so she never actually got to know her mum very well. That is definitely not my shade, because like I've been out in the sun recently, but we can make it work by just using slightly more bronzer and warming up my face a little bit. But wow, I thought I was using a darker shade today to go with my face, but I was mistaken. I accept when I am wrong. So as I was saying, her mum died just around a month after she was born, but she was always raised in kind of to say in the shadow of her mum would be incorrect. I would nearly say in the light of her mum, because, sorry, I just had a brush hair in my eye. She was always raised like in reference to her mum's beliefs and with respect to her mum's teachings and ways. So for instance, she was quite educated for a girl of that age, or in that age. Her father had all sorts of private tutors for her. Look at that, so pale. Even though her father was continuously in debt, it seems, one after the other, he always was able to make sure that she had like a pretty good education, whether it be with private tutors or even with himself. They would take her on lots of educational trips. But her father decided to remarry, seeing as he was struggling quite considerably with his debt and also with raising his kids. So he thought like to bring a woman onto the scene would be the best bet. The woman that he married was called Mary Jane Clairmount, and this is where Claire Clairmount comes into the picture again. Now, if you watched our video from last week, I'll link it up here, on Lord Byron, when he visited Switzerland, he had like a brief affair with Claire Clairmount and she fell pregnant and they had their daughter, I believe Allegra. I'm getting into all of these writers to such an extent now that it's almost like a reality program in my head. It's fabulous. I always knew a lot of this information, but it's really had to be solidified, seeing as I have to kind of talk about it like quite fluently. So it's become a lot more kind of consolidated in my head. So Mary Jane, the woman that he remarried, she and Mary, her daughter. There's a lot of Marys here, so I'll try and make it as clear as possible of who I'm referring to. So William's daughter, Mary, so Mary Shelley, and his new wife, Mary Jane Claremont, they did not have a good relationship at all. And this is because Mary Godwin, or Mary Shelley, she basically thought that Mary Jane Claremont preferred her own children, because she brought 2 children with her from a previous relationship into this new kind of blended family. Together, William and his new wife, Mary Jane, set up a publishing company where they would publish children's books, but it never took off, and in fact they were just continuously getting into a spiral of more debt, and eventually it had to basically be foreclosed on, and William nearly ended up getting himself into debtor's prison, just like, if you can remember, Charles Dickens' dad ended up in Marshalsea prison. Well, William Godwin almost ended up somewhere very similar, only that he had quite a lot of influential friends that would have an access to quite a sum of money, so he was able to constantly get himself out of these jams, but we can see throughout the rest of his life as well that he never quite got a hold on his finances. So Mary Goodwin met Percy Bysshe Shelley when she was 16 and he was 21, and he was like a companion of her father's. He had really looked up to her dad as a philosopher, his way of thinking, and he was around the house a lot, and that's where they first set eyes on one another. Percy Shelley had actually been married, or was married, when he first fell in love with Mary, and he actually left his pregnant wife to basically go off and have this affair with her. And that's something that we can see throughout their relationship together, was him leaving and being with other women. But they both believed in this idea of free love and not being tied down in monogamy. So it's up to you whether you believe that Mary Shelley truly was not hurt by this. So Percy was in the good books with William Godwin, with Mary's father, because he had actually agreed to help him get out of some debt. Percy Shelley's family were like traditionally aristocratic family. They had access to a huge amount of money and an estate, but Percy himself didn't really, because he didn't follow that aristocratic idea. He wanted to help people who were in financial straits. He wanted to lend people money and basically help people out that were in significant amounts of debt. Right, so moving on to powder. Percy ended up backing out of this promise to Mary's father that he was going to help him out with his debt, and basically ran off with his daughter. Kind of stabbed him in the front and the back, told him, yeah, no, actually, I'm not going to help you out with all of your debt. Also, I love your daughter and we're eloping together. Bye. You know? And William did not approve of this union. Like, it could be because, you know, Percy was already married with a wife who was pregnant, or it could be because Percy had backed out of actually helping him out with money. Personally, I think it was probably a mixture of the two, because not only was he now not going to be able to look forward to a debt-free life, but also his daughter's name was to be brought in to shame. Like, she was this like young innocent creature who had gone from like this beautiful idea of purity and innocence to now being married with an affair with a married man who also has a pregnant wife that he has abandoned to be with her. So in 1814, they actually ran away together to France, and they took Claire Claremont with them. If you remember again last week when we talked about Byron, Claire Claremont was actually with them all when they were in Switzerland, and that seemed to be a theme that Claire kind of came with them. And Shelley left his pregnant wife behind in England to go kind of gallivanting off with these two women. And not only was Claire Claremont, so Mary's stepsister, there with them, but it's also quite commonly known that Shelley went off with her as well, that he also had affairs with Claire. They ran out of money when they were traveling around France and ended up coming back to the UK, and Mary had fallen pregnant. Well, not fallen, you know, Mary had got pregnant on their travels around France, but they had run out of money and they ended up back in the UK. And at this point, Mary's father just completely disowned her. Not only had she run away with a married man who had a pregnant wife, but now also she was pregnant by him too. So any kind of chastity or purity that had been thought of in regards to Mary was now well and truly gone. And it would have been quite upsetting for her as well, because during her pregnancy she couldn't really celebrate because Percy was already married to Harriet Shelley, and Harriet then ended up giving birth before Mary because she had been pregnant before her. I hope you're following all of these love triangles, because there are many. So she had to witness like the love of her life, Percy Shelley, go back to his estranged wife and celebrate the birth of their child, all while she was quite heavily pregnant, and I believe she was quite ill throughout her pregnancy as well. And ultimately she ended up giving birth 2 months early, but the baby girl unfortunately passed away, and she kind of fell into a bit of a depression regarding that. But then she conceived again, and she kind of, I wouldn't say she got over it, I would say she kind of suppressed her original upset and trauma and started to live through this next pregnancy. She used to say that she was haunted by the ghost of her first child. So she had her son William after her first daughter unfortunately died premature 2 months early. And then in 1816, so now we're coming kind of around what I was talking about last week with Lord Byron, herself, so Mary, her stepsister Claire, her son William, and her partner, I suppose, or he was a partner to many women, Percy, all went to Geneva to visit Lord Byron. And Lord Byron was there with his physician, so with his doctor. They wanted to have this like raucous, fun, crazy summer, but ultimately the weather totally betrayed them, and they ended up being like left inside for days on end because the weather was awful. So to amuse themselves, they would come up with like different writing competitions and things like that, because think about it, they're basically all really famous writers now. Obviously you've got Lord Byron, you've got Percy Bysshe Shelley, you've got Mary Shelley. So what they used to do well into the night was that they would tell ghost stories like around the fire in order to keep themselves occupied and keep themselves busy. And it was suggested that, you know, they make up their own ghost stories, kind of like a little bit of a competition who could tell the best ghost story. And I think Mary Shelley had like a little bit of imposter syndrome, because she did not think she was good enough to come up with a story with kind of these bigwig men, these bigwig writers. And she used to get really paranoid and say to them like, how's your story going? You know, how's yours getting on? And she was really worried that she was not going to be able to come up with a story. But then one day when they were all discussing life, you know, as philosophical as they are, she kind of thought, you know, how awful it would be if a corpse was to reanimate, and that kind of sparked the idea of Frankenstein in her brain. So I'm going to put a little bit of my concealer over my brow. Now I'm lucky in that I don't really have brow hair here, this is a tattoo. So I'm just going to tap this over where I'm going to put that little indent. So once Mary got this idea for like a reanimated corpse, she got totally inspired for this Frankenstein story, and she stayed up all night and wrote it. And it seems that Percy Shelley was actually like quite a supportive partner, and she just wanted it to be like a little short story, but he was pushing her to, you know, no, like, do it to your full potential. He was a little bit worried that she wasn't living up to her parents' names. Like, her dad was a really famous philosopher, author, journalist that he had looked up to, and obviously her mum was like extremely famous in her own right too. Am I gonna absolutely fluff this up? Let's see, better make that a bit wider. Now that I've got kind of the basis for the eyebrow, I'm gonna go back in with my concealer. Ta-da! Some people, it seems, don't want Mary Shelley to get the praise that she deserves for writing this book, and they think that Percy was more of a collaborator than just like pushing her and editing her work a little bit. But it has been kind of looked at, and it was thought of that he did no more work than just a normal editor would do, so she does deserve the praise that she gets for it. So Mary did actually have a half-sister called Fanny. We also had a Fanny, lol, in the first video that I did, I think. But I struggled with the name then, and I struggle with it now. But she got a really upsetting letter from her half-sister, so Mary Wollstonecraft's children from a previous relationship before she was with William Godwin. And it basically alluded that she was very unhappy, she was very like unhappy with her life, unhappy with everything, and she went to go and find her sister, but unfortunately her sister, or her half-sister, had committed suicide by the time that they actually were able to find her. And it was also around this time that Percy Shelley's wife, Harriet, also committed suicide, and both of these were kind of hushed up because they were both from quite well-up families. Percy attempted to get custody of his children that he had had with Harriet, and after speaking to a lawyer, they were basically told, well, your chances would be so much better if you were married. So neither of them really believed in the idea of monogamy. They believed in loving who you love, free love, in many different relationships, but they got married in order to like have a better attempt to get the children. I'm just going to do some setting spray now because this has all been a lot of powder. Very pink, super pink. So Percy and Mary finally got married, even though none of them really believed too much in the concept of marriage. Right, I suppose I should do some eyeshadow. And finally her father accepted the relationship and was happy about it. I think because maybe she had like unsullied her name a little bit in his mind because they had now gotten married. And she was pregnant now again with her next child. So this is her third pregnancy. So far she has had her little girl who was premature and passed away, and then she had her son William, whose nickname was Will Mouse. She finished Frankenstein around 1817 but published it anonymously, and a lot of people thought that it was her husband's work because it was dedicated to William Godwin, who we know obviously is Mary's father, but Percy Shelley was like a known fan of William Godwin and a much more famous writer than she was, and I'm guessing that there was much less women writers in those days. They were travelling around quite a bit, more than likely to evade creditors, because Percy Shelley wasn't actually great with money himself at this stage, and they ended up travelling around Italy, and it wasn't a good time for the Shelleys, because even though they were evading the creditors, unfortunately, both of their children ended up passing away. So Kira, who had been the youngest, passed first in 1818, so the year that they started travelling. And then William, the older son, died of suspected malaria a year later in 1819. And Mary was just distraught. She had now given birth to 3 children and had none. They had gone to Italy in order to help her husband and his issues, but at what cost? She had lost all of her children, well, all of her remaining children because of it. So Mary conceived again and gave birth to Percy Florence Shelley, a son, and he was just the light of her life. This was now her 4th child, if you're kind of keeping track of all of the unfortunate, devastating losses that she's has to encounter throughout her life. And in 1822 she conceived again, but unfortunately miscarried, and she miscarried quite badly and ended up nearly dying. She basically started bleeding extremely heavily, and Percy had to put her in a bath of ice in order to stop the blood, and the doctors said that if he hadn't done that, she definitely would have died. So while still in Italy, when all of this happened, Percy and some of his mates basically got a sailboat and decided to go on like a little journey down the coast. I think it was up Livorno. I probably am completely mispronouncing that, but they decided, well, let's go on this little trip. So off they went, but unfortunately there was a storm, and actually I better put some highlight on my inner corner. There was a huge storm, and they didn't come home, and 10 days later, unfortunately, their bodies washed up on the shores of a local town. So Italy seems to have taken everything from Mary, you know, her children that had survived birth, and now her husband. So I'm going to put on some white liquid liner. I am hugely inspired by my very good mate Naomi, who I saw had this in a recent quiz that myself and my friends did over a Google Meet, and it looked really cool. So that is where my inspiration comes from today. Obviously just draw on the exact same way as a black liquid liner. She actually had something even cooler. She had a black liquid liner and then a white one under it or over it. I don't remember the exact thing she had, but that's what I'm going to try and do today. Pretty sure I bought it the first time I saw Naomi wear this, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to wear that look. And then I never have. But hey, we're doing it now. Okay, that looks pretty cool. I'm just going to do the other eye and I'll be right back. Okay, so here I am with the white liner on and then just a pair of demi wispy lashes from Ardell, just pushed right down on the inside and up on the outside, just to give it that lifted effect that I always bang on about. I always go with the super nude lip, but we're gonna go again with a nude lip, and that's because when I do something with my eyes like this, I don't want it to be like bam eyes, bam lips. I want one or the other. So Mary returned to England after all of the traumatic experiences that she had in Italy, and she struggled with her father-in-law. Her own father, I'm pretty sure, had passed away at this stage, and her father-in-law, so Percy, Shelley's dad, he agreed to like help her in regards to money, but only if she handed over like guardianship of her son, Percy Florence, so her only son. So obviously she said no, you know. And then she got smallpox in 1828, but she didn't have the same horrendous experiences as some of the people in that time, and she wasn't left with like the brutal scarring that some were, but it was said that she just didn't look young anymore after it, that it had ravaged her of her beauty. And then in 1830 she sold the copyright for Frankenstein for the huge fee of £60. So the absolute classic that it is nowadays was basically sold for £60. And then on the 1st of February 1851, Mary passed away of a suspected brain tumour at the age of 53. I was kind of shocked when I saw that age. I thought that she would have been much older, just because of all the things that she had done through her life, all of the trauma she had been through, tragedy, things like that. But no, 53, which nowadays isn't even old. So this is it. This is our Luke, and that was our BEWKS author. Thank you so much for sticking with me today. I hope you learned something. I hope that you're living for this white liquid eye look, and thank you, Naomi, for giving me awesome inspiration for it. I will see you guys next Sunday for more books, more looks, and I obviously won't be as cool then because I won't have this, you know, razor line in my eyebrow, but you know, can't be cool forever. See you later, bye!